Let's turn now to John Dean, author of Broken Government, How Republican Rule Destroyed the Legislative, Executive, and Judicial Branches, for the latest in our series of segments exploring the themes of his book. John, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Keith.
Is this, I've asked you this same question the last 6 or 7 times. Is this the paramount example of broken government?
It is certainly another example. It seems to be what is a very consistent pattern of behavior when you have authoritarian conservatism guiding and ruling the government. It's unfortunate, but it's another example, yes.
Obviously, well before his presidency and with remarkable clairvoyance, your former boss, President Richard Nixon, observed that it is not the crime that brings you down, it's the cover-up. Was he aware of the corollary that would seem to apply here, all of the above, that both can do you in just as nicely as the cover-up can?
Well, this is certainly in a different league. Obviously, a bungled burglary, as stupid as it was, is not in the same league as torture and recording that torturing as well as you're doing it and then destroying the tapes. So we're really talking about very different things, and this could be very difficult for both, not only the underlying crime, but if there's an obstruction of justice, that's going to be serious too.
To this point of obstruction of justice and what the revelation of the judge's rulings in 2005 before the destruction of the tapes really means, it's a question of mechanics. The court orders in the summer of 2005, how much do they hinge on what they were defining? Are they referring to torture of detainees who were at any point in their detention, Guantanamo Bay? Or is it specific? Does the videotape, does the torture, does the evidence have to be of things that happened at Guantanamo Bay? Because clearly Zubaydah was at a black site. He was not in Guantanamo Bay.
It really has to be rather specific, and it has to put the person who's subject to the order on notice. Keith, what's missing in mentioning just 2 is there's actually a third court order that I think is much more troubling for the administration in many ways, because a judge in a Freedom of Information Act case brought by the ACLU, looking at all the treatment of all the detainees, asked that they preserve the records, and this happened again in June of 2005, well before the destruction. So there actually is a third court order out there, and you have a judge who has a record of, indeed, he's the one who disclosed the Abu Ghraib photos and had no hesitation to go eyeball to eyeball with this government.
So the 2 circuit court cases that we're referring to, the Kennedy case, Judge Kennedy, and the other one, we're really splitting hairs for no particular reason. There's actually one that's much more clear-cut?
I think there is. I think the ACLU today filed a motion for contempt, and I think they've got a real case. So I think that's one to watch.
Oops. There's so much, as you suggested, there's so much evidence of potential crimes here, even to the point of this Mr. Kiriakou saying, sure, we waterboarded Zubaydah, sure, we tortured him. I mean, he may be a material witness in who knows how many cases. Why are we not already seeing the formation of the proverbial select committee in the Senate? Why are we only talking or only hearing about vague support for the possibility of appointing a special prosecutor at some point in the future?
It certainly is indicative of the change of times. I think the simplest explanation to me is we 30 years ago didn't have a strong right-wing radio. You didn't have Fox News. People are out telling Americans that this kind of behavior is acceptable. And when you have that, it results in getting a lot more leeway than you would in the past. So that explains, I think, why it's been so slow in getting off the ground. And they've had cover for a lot of the things they've done.
And how does it explain the Democrats dragging their feet on even coming out and saying we want a special prosecutor on this?
Well, they're afraid of being attacked as being wimpy and weak and less than fully patriotic and enthusiastic and how tough they are. This is their wussing factor that I've talked about before, that I think they're going to have to heal before they go into the general election.
Well, you know, that could be solved very easily. Demand a special prosecutor who waterboards all of his witnesses. John Dean, once again, with the latest in his recurring series on broken government, author of the book by the same name. As always, John, our great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.